My guest today breaks every narrative you've been told. He's Arab, he's Muslim, he's Bedouin, and he's proudly Israeli. On October 7th, members of his own community were murdered by Hamas, a reality the world barely acknowledges. While people argue about Israel from a distance, he lives the truth up close. Tamer Masudin, welcome to our show.
Hello. It's good to be here.
Okay, on October 7th, we know that Hamas didn't just murder Jews. They killed Arab Israelis, Bedouin Muslims from your community. Why do you think the world still does not know this, or they fail to acknowledge this?
That is correct. I mean, I remember waking up the first early hours of October 7th, right? Waking up to the sound of the sirens, and I was living in the Israeli center at the time, right next to Tel Aviv. So hearing the sirens at that specific day, that specific time, and that specific location was extremely weird because you don't hear those much. I got used to them living in the south, but in the center it was something different. Then obviously I opened up my phone and I started looking at the videos, the feeds, the things that are coming out of the Gaza envelope. And all of a sudden you hear the horrific stories about the raping and killing. And I think amidst all of that chaos, people didn't realize that Hamas is a terrorist organization wasn't just targeting Israeli Jews. It was also targeting foreigners. It was also targeting Israeli Arabs that were, by chance or by force of I don't know, time. I don't know how to say it. They were there at the moment. Some were kidnapped. I know I've seen one of them being kidnapped live on camera, and he's telling the two terrorists that are interrogating them, I'm not you guys what you're looking for, so there's no reason to do all of this. And they still shot and killed him. And obviously you hear the news about the rockets falling in. I remember the early beginning of the war. I think the first day there was a rocket that fell in the Bedouin diaspora nearby, and a couple of got killed because of it. And a lot of these things got missed out because of the chaos, because of the fact that all of a sudden it is war, and it's not just another operation. And I think this is where our role as Israeli advocates here to come out and speak about these things. And obviously not only horrific stories, but also you had, I believe it was 17 Bedouin civilians who went and saved their lives that day, those who came all the way from Rahat to the envelope to save people, those who had put, in a small van, 20, 30, 40 people in one small van, and, trying to get them away from all the fire hazards and violence that was taking place. And I think it is also very important to bring those issues, as well as the IDF soldiers who've been fighting to protect all of us, that not only consist of Jews, but also consist of Muslims, Christians, Druze, that are out there putting their life on the line trying to protect the country.
When you first saw this footage from October 7th, what illusion collapsed for you? I think in previous interviews you said that you thought it was like ISIS footage.
I think it was the absolute barbarism, the absolute horrific violence that took place that day. I mean, the idea that they weren't trying to hide it. It wasn't something that they were trying to hide. It wasn't something that they were trying to do in secret so nobody can see. I mean, for God's sake, they brought their own cameras with them. They brought their own GoPros with them. They were wearing them. You could see the footages of themselves wearing them and talking to the camera. They wanted the world, and most importantly, they wanted Israelis to see this, because they knew that if Israelis saw this, they would be terrified. People will get angry, and a lot of things can happen. But they can come out and lie about these footages and say, well, it's AI. It's not us, because we condone violence and we only fight soldiers, and stuff that sadly a lot of people here right now believe. And I think the fact that, I was seeing all of this violence, I was seeing the videos, the horrific videos, and hearing the stories that are coming out of the Gaza envelope, mostly from the kibbutzim in the area. I think that was the moment that I realized, well, we're fighting evil that is not so much different than the whole ISIS thing. When they started broadcasting their execution videos and posting them on YouTube for people to see, and all of us got horrified because of it, because it wasn't something that we got used to see.
So what does it do to you as an Arab Muslim to watch Hamas speak in the name of Islam, to speak in the name of Muslims? How does that make you feel?
Well, I would say that it pisses me off more than most people can think, really, because not only they're hijacking an entire religion, but they're, let me put it bluntly, they're ruining it for the rest of us, right? Because we are the ones who have to walk around carrying the consequences of their actions. when we want to speak Arabic in our own country, I don't know, when we want to speak Arabic abroad, we are the ones who need to carry out the fact that we have extremist radicals among us that are willing to go all of this road to try to harm Jews because they're Jews. And we have been living in the state of Israel, and we've been living pretty much so far so good, as far as I can consider. And we never had really issues with the state of Israel as a Jewish state of Israel. Maybe we had, as it happens in every democratic country, maybe there are specific things that you want, maybe fundings for specific programs, education, these type of things that always happen between the civil discussion between a citizen and their country. But to see all of this being hijacked, I think they also know that affects also us, the citizens of the state of Israel, the people that are trying to live a normal life. It gives a bad image to the Arab civilians or Arab society in the Middle East overall. And I think people are realizing and seeing that all of this is being defeated as we speak right now. We're seeing the protests in Iran, and I think as soon as that happens, people will realize that we don't want fundamentalism and jihad no more. It doesn't help us.
Exactly. You're, as you said before, Arab, Muslim, Bedouin, but you're also a full Israeli citizen with equal rights. Who
Right.
taught the world these identities have to contradict each other? Why don't people understand this?
I think the most simple way is because, and I see that in Western academia right now, in some classes and some schools that I go into, you see that there is some sort of guilt, let's say, for the mistakes of the past or things that happened in the past. In many ways, these mistakes or these horrific things that happened, some of them were absolutely not justified as we can think. I think create a pathway in which we view everything from the perspective of oppressed versus the oppressors, right? And naturally, you'd assume that people of certain color would be oppressed and people of a certain color would be the oppressors. So that came in a way, and because of all that, I would say anti-Israeli propaganda that you see here every once in a while, not only coming from the streets, but also coming from high places, academia. We saw that at Harvard, we saw that at Yale and Columbia and all of these places. It gives a legitimization, I think, to the idea that, Jews are white, okay? Jews are white. They don't have anything to do with the Middle East. They need to get out there. And everybody else there who is a person of color, who is from a different different ethnicity, is automatically oppressed, right? So they look at me. They think, well, they get surprised of seeing someone who's black, who is Israeli, who is Arab, who is all of these things. And honestly, I don't see any contradictions with who I am and what I am. The people who do have a problem with it can always find me on my social media and come talk to me about it. I'm always open.
What do you think that Western activists get completely wrong about Arab life inside Israel? We hear the accusations of apartheid and all these different accusations. What are the things you think that they're getting wrong about it?
I think one of the main things that they are getting wrong is the idea that all of us are somehow living as second-class citizens. I think that is the most absurd and stupid idea, and one of the most easiest, I would say, to refute. Because all you have to do is just visit. All you have to do is just look at the history of the last 10 years, see how many Arab parliament members we had in the last 10 years, see how many coalitions we had with Arab parties, how many Arab judges. You see the terms of equality and how slowly in each and every different Arab community, you see the quality of life is getting better and better because we have access to technology and because we have access to all of these opportunities. I mean, where I went to school, it wasn't that common for, let's say, women when they get to the age of 18, 19, to travel abroad and study med and come back and work, let's say, in Beersheba. Nowadays, it's like the common thing. Everybody does that. Almost every second house does that. And you can see that the quality of life for us citizens is improving. Obviously, you have differences here and there because we're all shaped by different things like let's say society, religion, ethnicity, all these kind of things. So of course, you have small differences between each and every community here and there. But overall, I think and I believe that the starting point is almost equal to everybody. I mean, I grew up in a Bedouin community in the South where I grew up as a kid. We didn't have running electricity all the time. And look at me now. I graduated from a private university in Israel. I'm about to graduate from another private university here in the US. I had scholarships. I had programs. I was a writer, Israeli advocate. I traveled almost half of the world by now, and I did all of this. And I'm 28. I'm not. I'm still young. I still have all this time in front of me. So to hear people saying, having these misguided ideas about the people who are living in the state of Israel, especially minorities, is absolutely absurd.
Wow, that's incredible. You've mentioned in previous interviews that the racism that you experienced didn't come from Jews, it came from
Right.
people that were in your own community. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, those who grew up in the Middle East probably will know what I'm talking about. But inside the Arab society and the Bedouin society in small, but the Arab society overall, you have a hierarchy of systems. So you have clans, you have families who come with a certain prestige and certain status, and that status gives you respect. And people forget that throughout history, I mean, the way that the Middle East became Middle East and became Arab happened through conquest, happened through wars, happened through religious conquests. Some of it was also, I would say, bluntly colonization that happened across the Mediterranean and North Africa. And we, as Black people or Black Africans, were brought throughout, I think, 1,300 years of Arab/Muslim slave trade that happened. We were dispersed across all the Middle East. And when we were brought, we weren't necessarily Muslim, because in Islam it is forbidden to enslave another Muslim. So we weren't, we didn't convert at the beginning, and we were traded, and that's basically how we got into this, the fact that we have Black people who live in the Middle East, right? And because of you have a system of hierarchy, and because of you have a history of slavery and oppression, at some point those social nuances are still existing in the society today. So, for example, when I was a kid, I was treated differently because of the color of my skin by people who spoke the same language as me. And for me, it was also surprising, because on one end you go online and you hear people telling you that Israel is oppressing you, the Jews are oppressing you, the Jews are making your life a living hell, and is either the people who are treating you any remotely uh, of that described way is the people who speak the same language as you, and live right next to you and are in your neighborhood. So to me, it never made any sense.
And it's interesting that the people who claim to fight racism, they refuse to listen to stories like yours of Arab Israelis, of where the real racism comes from.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is where I get into the picture. We get into the picture. The fact that we are trying to fight as much disinformation as we can. And also, in a way, I think they count on the premise that somehow we don't speak English, that we don't necessarily get to understand the lies that are being told about us in the BBC or whatever, because we don't speak English. And I think that is also a stupid idea, because we do. And we are on social media, we are everywhere, and people speak to each other, and we talk to each other about certain things. So it's not like, we can't get our voices and opinions heard. We can. Those who choose not to listen to it, that's their problem by now.
Do you think it's possible to separate the Palestinian cause from Hamas?
Do I think it is possible to separate the Palestinian cause from Hamas? Well, the optimistic in me want to say yes. I really mean it. The optimistic 17-year-old kid that lives in me that thinks that the world is rosy and sunshine, wanna say yes, right? But the realistic person who've been here in the last 2 years, and I don't agree with it, because I look at the last 2 years, and I look not only that, but like opinion polls coming from Palestinian research institutes, in which you see like a year and a half, almost 2 years into the war, still 75-80% of the Palestinians inside Judah and Samaria and inside Gaza still support Hamas and think that Hamas's decision to go out and start this war was a good idea. And I think you only need to be, if you look around at the last 2 years and you see what happened to Gaza and you see what happened all over, there's like no rational way you can look at it and think, well, the people who started this are geniuses. We should give them the Nobel Peace Prize because they ended something. Because, well, let's be honest, they didn't make Israel weaker, not by a long shot, right? Hezbollah is almost dismantled. Hamas is almost dismantled, right? The Houthis in Yemen are almost, right now being taken care of as we speak, with the whole normalization that is going on in Africa right now, right? Iran, with massive protests that are happening as we speak. We can see that the regime is crumbling apart and about to fall, right? So no one can look at everything that is happening or happened at this moment, and at Venezuela also. So no one can look at everything that happened and think, well, the decision of the people who started this is a smart decision. That being said, I think it depends right now on the Palestinians. I mean, if they're willing to look to themselves and say, well, we've done this. We tried the biggest invasion that we can possibly think of, and it didn't benefit us at all. Maybe it's time to think of a different path, and it depends on them. And also, that being said, I think the Palestinian Authority had a historical opportunity here to do something about it, and they fumbled the bag again. When the war began, I mean, they could have, since they and Hamas are political and ideological rivals at some point, when the Cold War began, they could have stood up there on the front and said, hey, Israel, we don't like Hamas. We don't like these people either. We want to fight these terrorist organizations as well because we're already fighting them in the Palestinian territory. We're already doing that. So how about we join hand in this and fight this together so that we can get rid of Hamas and maybe continue talking about the whole Palestinian, Israeli-Palestinian conflict and how to solve this. So instead of doing that, they doubled down. They spent the last 2 years doubling down, accusing Israel of committing genocide, accusing us of war crimes, and going exactly reading the textbook of Hamas and doing all of this. And this was your once in a lifetime opportunity to get rid of Hamas in one single sweep, maybe possibly go back into Gaza and hopefully end the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? But they didn't do it. They had the opportunity, but they couldn't deliver. So again, the hopeful in me want to say yes, but the realistic in me can't say that.
So it seems that they are not interested in peace, and they're not even interested in a Palestinian state. It seems that they just want to take over the entire Israel. What I heard was that their mission was called Tufan al-Aqsa, right? That they wanted to take over al-Aqsa.
They wanted in the original documents, I think, of Hamas, they wanted to on October 7th. Yeah, they wanted to continue all the way and connect to Judah and Samaria, to Jerusalem, all the way. They were thinking that Iran and Hezbollah gonna join them, the IRGC and Hezbollah gonna join them, and they were betting also on Arab Israelis to join them, but none of that happened.
Why do you think the world still talks about a Palestinian state, peace, and things like that when it seems pretty obvious that Hamas and their leaders and even the Palestinian Authority are not really interested in that? As we see, the Palestinian Authority was given the chance several times the past decades to make peace, to get a Palestinian state, but they always refused. Why do you think people still push that Palestinian state as an idea?
Good question. I think for two main reasons. One, I believe it's the whole Western guilt that we talked about. So I think in the academia and mostly, I would say in left-leaning circles, you would see real look at Israel as the last colonial power of the Western world, and maybe if we get rid of that, we can convince ourselves that we did a good job, and the rest of the world can get angry of us for what we did, right? So I think it's part of this. It's part of this, and also you have the whole religious radical circle surrounding Israel, from radical Islam, jihadism, and all these terrorist organizations that are lurking around for fundamentalist reasons. They want to destroy Israel and they can't accept the fact that Israel exists. And since, the whole decision making in the Arab world goes from top to bottom, you understand that now they are in a problem. So even those who want to normalize with Israel, let's say, can't do it right away because they're afraid that the people are going to flip on them because of it. And I think also in my opinion is the fact that we're a strong country. We're not a weak country that, the moment it gets to be attacked or something like that happens, we fall down and we break down. And I think also because of its history, because people realize and know deep down that the state of Israel belonged to the Jewish people, and there's no historical way, there's no way of making an argument that would say the otherwise. Right? From every point of view, everywhere you dig, you find more Jewish artifact in the land of Israel. Wherever you dig, wherever you go, wherever you try to find. So it's not a history that you can erase. And I think deep down, honestly, a lot of it, all the Palestine noise is less about Palestine and the fact that Israel exists as a state still now, and that pisses a lot of people off. And you can hear from them, and you can see in a way it shuts down their logic, so they can think in a logical way about a country is being attacked right now, so the logical shit thing would be for it to defend itself. No, they think in terms of it's an evil, bad, wicked place, and most of them don't even know half of the things about the state of Israel. They never even visited.
Exactly. You have a large presence on social media, and you hear a lot of things, obviously, about Israel, about Gaza being an open air prison, about Israel committing genocide, and all these different things that spread so easily, even though they are false? Why do you think that they do spread so easily? And why don't facts spread as easily as lies?
I think some people forget that not everything that we see online is organic, right? A lot of what we see online, you have bots, you have algorithms, you have. If you remember when Elon Musk did the whole find the location thing on Twitter, all of a sudden you find accounts that been talking about America first, and based in Pakistan, right? All of these places. So people sometimes forget that many of these accounts and many of these lies now in today's history in the way that technology works comes from social media, and not all of it is organic. I mean, I've been walking around in the US and in many places, and some of it, people in New York, in large city, and you talk to people and they say, well, I don't know much about Israel. I don't know much about the Palestinians. And I don't necessarily care about it. So it's like, there is I would say a difference between social media and where we live in social media, and we counter this hate and all of this online between the real world. Having said that, I think also there is the way that social media reflects on the real world is possible and there. For example, radicalization online can lead to violent incidents and anti-Semitic attacks on the ground, and we've seen that happen in many places, from Canada to the terrorist attack in Manchester to the recent one in Australia. So that also we need to take into consideration and see that. And I think the reason why facts don't spread as far is because it's not something that is pushed by the algorithm necessarily on these accounts on social media. The moment you have an argument, let's say on an Instagram reel, all of a sudden you see the views on the reel jumping and jumping and jumping, and all of a sudden it goes to people that in countries in many places that you don't necessarily know, because the algorithm picks it as something that is trendy, right? But if you, I don't know, for example, it happens to me. Sometimes I post a factual video and it don't get that much of attention because people don't argue about it as much. But when I make a video that triggers emotions, let's say laughing, humor, anger, all of a sudden it's pushed all the way. So also people need to take that into consideration, I think.
And it seems that it's not just the social media. A lot of the mainstream media, for example, BBC, they are more interested to push the anti-Israel agenda than the pro-Israel agenda.
That is true. I mean, you can see it with the BBC. With I don't know how many times they breach their own guidelines when it comes to reporting Israel and the war. And then you had the whole documentary with the son of the Hamas leader that they produced and filmed, and all of a sudden they didn't know. And the documentary itself was filled with the editorial. Instead of writing Jews, they write Israelis or Zionists or whatever to try to mask what we hear and see with our own eyes. So obviously you have those news outlets that honestly stopped being about reporting the facts and reporting the news, and most they became like tabloids. So he said this, he said that, and slamming us against each other. This is why, for example, when it comes to me, I don't necessarily consume news from those traditional media outlets. I go on social media. I try see from my independent sources what's really going on, and talking to people to understand what's going on. And I think so. I mean, we have the power. Also, people like us, people like me, who have influence and have reach. Because, for example, I look at my certain videos in a month and I say, well, I had roughly the same amount of views as three major Israeli news outlets in a month, right? And I look into myself and I think, well, more people watched a video that I made than people watched three major news outlets in a month in my country. So that's amazing. That means that from the comfort of my home, I have the ability to make a video, produce it, film it, edit it, and post it, and I will get probably the same amount of reach as my local BBC or whatever. And I think more people like us, tech savvy, pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist, more Jews need to pick on that and start working on seeing how we can utilize that technology to make our voices heard. Because again, we don't have the numbers with us, but we do have the technology. We do have the human capital to make it work, and yeah, we can. I mean, I would love to see more Israeli content creators. I've been keep saying this and pushing this. More and more and more of us need to come out and talk, even in conversations or content that is not related to Israel. It can be food, it can be sport, it can be anything. But the fact that people see us as normal human beings and not the monsters that the media is trying to portray, in a sense, will help us a lot in our cause, I believe.
We also live in an age, like you said, from the comfort of your own home, you can reach a big
But look at
audience.
us, we're doing it right now.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So from from what you've been seeing, obviously you've been seeing a lot of lies that have been spread about Israel, about the conflict. What do you think is the most dangerous lie that the West keeps telling itself about this conflict? If you had to pin one down.
Oh, wow, so many. It's like picking who's your favorite actor. All of them are good ones. Well, obviously, I think there's many. One in particular that I think is seasonal. It's not around the year. It's only in a specific season, specific time in the year that comes out every time. And that is the idea that Jesus is Palestinian. I'm sure you heard about this, and I'm sure you read about this and have seen this online. Or, sometimes trying to portray Palestinians as Christians who are being persecuted, or using imagery of Jesus Christ to do that with a Palestinian kufiya, with all of this. And you look at the image of Jesus in a kufiya and you say, well, if I'm just decomposing this just for 2 seconds, just for 2 minutes, okay? The kufiya is not Palestinian, it's Iraqi. Kufiya is means a headscarf, right? And it's not even Arabic. Okay, put that on the side. Jesus Christ of Nazareth is Jewish. He was born in Bethlehem, in the land of Israel. Nowhere in the new scripture, in the old scripture, does he or his disciples or any of that era refer to him as Palestinian. No one, absolutely no one. And I looked it up. I read the Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament. I looked it up. Nowhere, nobody said that. And not only that, you look at the term Palestinian that was, enforced by the Romans maybe 100 years after he was crucified, after the Bar Kokhba revolt. Correct me if I'm mistaken, right? And named the entire region Syria Palestina. So this is where the name Palestine came from. It was an insult from the Romans, a last insult from the Romans to the Jews. Like, hey, we took your land, and now we name this land in this name of your enemies, whatever. And it's a seasonal because just on every holiday, like every Christmas, it pops out, and all of a sudden your entire social media is filled with it. And I think it's dangerous because in a one way it eliminates the history of the Jewish people in that sense, just by that, in the history of the Christian people, just by doing that. And because Jesus wasn't, a political figure that you can stick a political identity on and label him as you want in that case, and just and use him for your political gains. If you do that, then you're missing the entire message of both the old and the new covenant. Because what are you doing? Doesn't make any sense. And I think it's one of the most dangerous because in one way it hits two of the communities, and it's just seasonal, but it's big. Like you see it, you can't miss it.
Exactly. Why do you think that Israel is judged by a moral standard that no other country is held to?
I honestly think that they judge us by their own skeletons in the closet, right? Like, for example, recently I saw that Belgium have joined the case against Israel at the ICJ. And with all due respect to Belgium and the Belgian people, I have nothing against the Belgian society, but you can't look at King Leopold history in the Congo and everything that happened in the Congo under their watch and by their hand throughout all this time, in which, they haven't been persecuted about everything that happened, that they did. Nobody took them to the ICJ. Nobody took them to the international court and sued them for everything that they did, and have the audacity to come out and say, yeah, Israel, we're joining the case against you because what you're doing is genocide. I'm willing to stand on trial, but only if you're standing next to me. That's pretty much it. I can see that many countries and many places in I would say in the Western hemisphere, judge Israel by their own sins, but by their own mistakes of what they did. And they think that Israel, because of the history of the oppressed people, because of everything that happened to us throughout our independence until now, they think that, by somehow, if anything happened, we're going to lose our shit. And we start, we're going to use nukes and we're going to bomb places. We're going to do whatever we want and we won't listen to anybody. And a lot of them miss that we imply standards on our own military and our own people that most of our allies don't even apply to themselves. We hear about the foreign armies that come to Israel to learn and study and understand about the rules of combat that we have and our tactics and all these things that we do in our army. We hear about special forces, about police officers, people who come, for example, at my Reichman University, old university, come study counterterrorism to understand how to counter terrorist organizations and they go to their countries, people know that we can do these kind of things. And still, in some places in the West, they're afraid that we're gonna let loose and cause havoc and not abide by our own sets of morals and our own laws. And it's a hypocrisy, especially it's a hypocrisy when you look at the UN and you see the list of condemnations the last couple of years. You see Israel, 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 maybe Iran, maybe Iran, but nothing. It's like, and it's you can see the hypocrisy, and it pisses me off at least.
Yeah, speaking of Iran, they put them on the Human Rights Council when they're murdering their own citizens on the streets right now.
You see, so it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And I know that the average world citizens think of the UN in a higher regard than me, I would say. But you can't look at all of these things and think to yourself, well, there isn't a hypocrisy there. There isn't a bias there in that case. And I feel like a lot of Israelis like me already seeing that and feeling that. This is why, in my opinion, a lot of people are now saying, let's try to be self-sufficient as possible, independent as possible, not rely on any country for our defense, not rely too much on any country for our security, and how can we fortify this place before everything goes down.
We've heard the chant from the river to the sea for a long time now. Do you think that
Right.
people actually understand what they're saying, or do they not care? Let me give you a part two to this question.
Yeah, right.
Yesterday, I heard a chant, I think it was in Queens, that they said that, I don't remember the first part of the chant, but they said, support Hamas here. And
Say it
that's,
loud, say it clear.
yeah, exactly. So I never heard that until now. So why do you think that people living safely in the West, they romanticize these violent movements like Hamas? It's just a very interesting phenomena.
Well, regarding the from the river to the sea, I think most people don't realize and have no idea what they're saying, because they think that from the river to the sea means free, democratic, democracy, beautiful equality, all the diversity, all the I checklist for you, and you can have the best things that you can have, and nationality, religion, all these kind of things won't mean anything to anyone anymore. And no, the word don't work like that. It doesn't look like this. And also, people don't realize that the origin of the chant is not from the river to the sea. It's من المية للمية فلسطين عربية. From the water to water, Palestine is Arab. Right? And to make it catchy, they to translated it so that people can get on with it and uses it as a chant. But in Arabic, it basically means from the river to the sea, the whole Palestine is Arab. This is what it means. So it erases the entire history of Israel. It erases the entire history of the Jewish people. It erases the entire history of the people that are already living in this country, already have magnificent life, and erasing all of that in just one sweep and say, no, we in the Western society, where we live in Queens or whatever, we think that we know better than the Israelis how their life should look like and how they should live their life. So we want to destroy all of this just because we're can. And this is the most, I would say, the highest type of arrogance. We want to destroy all of it just because we can, and let's give those Arabs and those Jews what we think that they need so that, they stop fighting, whatever. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like this. It doesn't look like this. This is not how the real world, I believe, works. And obviously, I've seen the protest in Queens, protest you can call it, and I find it funny because I saw a mix of crowd there chanting. So there wasn't only young people there. There were elderly as well chanting there, and you can see them raising their Palestinian flags and chanting for that we support Hamas. And I think first of all they got courage just because of the recent change in the mayor in New York, I believe, not because of Mamdani himself as a character, but because of the people he associated with him in terms of the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the people and their stances on it. And once you surround yourself with people who are practically fine with calling Israel an apartheid state and calling for resistance against Israel and all these kind of things and supporting the BDS, you're basically green lighting for everybody who is, more extreme than you. I would say, hey, this is a new administration. You can do whatever the hell you want here. And maybe if there was someone who, more sensitive about these kind of issues, and honestly, we support Hamas here. Hamas is a terrorist organization designated by the United States. Imagine if, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, somebody stood up in Times Square and said, we support Al Qaeda here. You know how crazy that would be? You know how many New Yorkers would jump at you? How many Yankee fans will bash you out just because of saying that? And right now, it's like, as a terrorist organization, as a fundamentalist terrorist organization, it's not that different from Al Qaeda. So there's no reason why people need to support and say and come, and highly illegal, possibly, for people to do that. And it's happening under your watch, buddy. And you need to take care of that because no one will come to save you.
Exactly. And possibly it's because, Mamdani, while he was running, he refused to condemn Hamas. He was always using just these broad terms. And so people thought, he's probably agreeing with us, right? So why not, try it?
Pretty much. I mean, being ambiguous about, for example, do you think Israel have a right to exist or no? Or being ambiguous about, do you think Hamas is a terrorist organization? If it takes you like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to try to answer if Hamas is a terrorist organization, yes or no, you probably don't think that they're a terrorist organization, but you just don't have the way to say it. So let's be honest.
Look, if Hamas did what they did on October 7th to fellow Muslims, people that were pretty much similar to them, what would they do to the LGBT, to, people that are not their religion, all these people that are protesting for them? If you drop them in Gaza, what would happen to them, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just they're already doing this. I mean, you just have to look at 2006 and to see from 2006 everything that Hamas did while being in power in Gaza, everything they did to the Palestinian people themselves, from the money they stole, from the infrastructure that they used, from the torture, extortion, violence, even throughout the war. And it's sad because you see, like, actual people suffering from this, and their life are being ruined because of this. And you look at it and say, well, they have this terrorist organization that destroying their life, and all the people who are outside in the streets are using their suffering as a way, to let's destroy Israel and wipe it out of existence. I mean, Israel didn't tell Hamas to spend all its money on rockets instead of infrastructure. We didn't tell Ismail Haniyeh and his buddies, how about you guys spend your money on rockets and luxury hotels in Qatar instead of, feeding your people and giving them, basic public infrastructure. Why you can't guys, do that? So, in a way, I think there's a lot of responsibility here also on not us, but on the other side. I mean, where's the responsibility in that? Why can't they take responsibility for the actions that they did and for their leadership and say, well, we have to take it differently? And I think that people who support these terrorist organizations don't do it because they understand the ideology necessarily of the organization and what they want, but because it's cool, it's trendy right now, it's very edgy, so I can just wrap myself in a cafe and go down the streets and shout, and everybody will think that I'm cool. But that they're not doing this out of of a place of real morals, because the moment that Christians in Nigeria began being killed and massacred, they didn't do the same for them. The protests in Iran right now, nobody's doing the same for the Iranians. In the Congo and different places in Sudan, nobody was doing these kind of things for those people. The Kurds, the Yazidis in the Middle East, nobody came for them. Nobody went on strikes and tried to destroy army facilities or weapon facilities for them. And you can see the hypocrisy.
Exactly. Now, we know that Hamas doesn't act alone. Behind Hamas is Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran. Why does Iranian regime invest billions of dollars in destroying Israel instead of helping its own people?
I think it goes back to the simple doctrine of the IRGC since the Iranian Revolution, even before that, which, in their opinions, they think that in the whole region, the Middle East, there are two sets of evil responsible for everything that is going on in the world. There's the little devil, which is Israel, and there's the bigger devil, which is the United States of America. The biggest enemy is the United States of America because of the thoughts of imperialism and it not being a Muslim empire and all of that. So idea is that to hurt America, we need to fight its little devil that is here. That is the only way you can catch its attention. The only way you can make sure that they will listen to you to do all of this. And I believe their fundamentalist, idea of, and also you have a lot of anti-Semitism into that, religious anti-Semitism, a lot of it, from blaming Israel on the Jews for the droughts in Iran that are happening right now that the people are not buying anymore because they're not stupid. So obviously you have all of these justifications and looking at Israel as the core enemy of all of this. And they try to convince the people, the Iranian people, that all of the misery that happening to them right now, the sanctions, the water, the money, everything that is happening right now is because of Israel and the US, and everybody hates us. And I think the people of Iran are finally realizing that that is not the case. No, it wasn't the case before, but that is definitely not the case right now. And we want a better life for ourselves and for our children. And I pray that they are succeeded in their effort and they manage to topple the regime.
What do you think that the West misunderstands about this Iranian regime versus the Iranian people? Doesn't seem like, the media is giving it enough coverage.
Right. Well, I think because of social media and the effects of social media, people in higher positions of power in the Western Hemisphere, I would say, realize and understand that the regime is not so popular in Iran. It's not so popular. It was a revolution that was involved in not only the Islamic Republic, but also other groups that they were there. But the moment these guys got into power, they wiped every opposition there is. So you can say that they realize that the people in the government are not necessarily the same, but also they understood that the government is subjecting the people with all horrific means, and the average citizen in Iran can't go out and protest, because if that happens, they're going to get killed, they're going to get in prison, a lot of bad things going to happen to them. And we see that right now, and we hear reports right now coming from there. And I think the biggest misunderstanding that the West has on Iran right now is the idea that if they topple the regime, somebody else worse may be gonna come in and take power. Because that doesn't seem to be the case. That doesn't seem to be the case from what the Iranians want. That doesn't seem to be the case from the type of the protest that is going on there, from the mix of all the different groups and ethnicities in Iran. And you can tell that the people want something different, a different type of ruling that they had, different from what they have right now, the whole fundamentalist crazy mindset that they have there. And maybe perhaps a change of mind will help us realize that, maybe not eliminating, but taking IRGC targets out of the picture at the moment, maybe that would be the necessary step that would help the Iranian people to finally take their country back.
Do you think also that Iran fears Israel making peace with other Arab countries? Like, before October 7th, we heard that Israel was getting close to getting Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords, which is why they attacked. Do you think that's what they fear, is that they're going to start making peace with more and more and more Arab countries?
I think that would be the case to an extent. Why? Because let's say if you have an enemy in the region, like the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Iranian regime, you don't want this regime to be stronger. You don't want it to have more and more allies. You want it to be isolated so that you can, mediate the damage and possibly harm it, sorry, or even eliminate it if that is possible. And I think this is what the Iranian regime have been trying to do in the last 20 years, from the Ring of Fire, right? So you have Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, and the Iraqi militias and the Houthis, everybody surrounding Israel. And maybe that would be a way to eliminate the Israeli danger, and eliminate their capabilities, because the moment Israel thinks of a war with Iran, they will see that it will be more costly and people will not be so keen on doing that. I think everything flipped after October 7th, and mostly, I would say, decision makers in Israel realized that the Ring of Fire is not that scary as people thought it might be. And the moment you start hammering down at precision, all of a sudden every web starts falling down. So I think people, Iranian regime realized the danger of Israel normalizing relationship with countries nearby, and I think this is why they act the way they act, and they try to push for as much propaganda in the West. I think not only in the Middle East, try to push as much propaganda as possible, which to them it was working for a bit throughout the war, I would say, but now I think we'll see. Maybe after we finish this call, we won't see an Iranian regime no more.
Amen.
Amen.
Why do you think that so many Arabs, Muslims who think like you are afraid to speak up publicly like you?
How to put it nicely, because we'll probably receive so many death threats that a lot of people will not necessarily be so happy to do that, right? I mean, the moment I start speaking about Hamas and terrorism, the moment I start speaking about my experience in the state of Israel, I personally received a lot of threats for my life, for as a criticism of my work. And not a lot of people can handle it. And not, and, you know, a threat is a threat, but you only need one crazy person to do something, and all of a sudden, you know, it's like it's an open hunting season for Zionist content creators, and we don't want that. So I think a lot of people are scared, are terrified. It's not that easy, and you can possibly lose friends, lose connections, lose your job if you decided to do that, especially if you don't live in a democratic society, especially if you live in a place that displaying any affection to Israel or the Jewish people might, you know, harm you. And we saw that. So I think a lot of people are hesitant because of fear, and it's very understandable. I mean, I won't ask from anyone something that I won't necessarily do myself, and I understand that it's hard. Having said that, we can't afford being silent and being on the sidelines, especially if people are doing horrendous things in our names.
Do you think that there are more Arab Israelis that agree with you than people realize?
100%. I think so. I mean, the fact that you see so many Arab Israelis integrated in the Israeli society is in a way a tell, because you don't see people wanting to be, you know, members or try to integrate in a society that they don't feel part of and they don't connect to. Again, obviously you have different social economics and not opportunities, I would say, but situations between different communities, as I said before. But yeah, people realize that, I mean, in Israel they probably get it the best out of in any other place in the Middle East. Strong army, strong nation. Nobody's asking you to do military service or national service, which in my opinion they should. I believe in a mandatory military or national service for everybody in the state of Israel. But nobody's asking you to do as much. And you can go at 18, start a business, start working, find a job, go to college, graduate, do a semester abroad, come back, get married, all by the age of 25, 26. And you still, won't have, and your friends who went to the army, still in the army doing, their work. And I think a lot of people realize that they have opportunities that they don't necessarily get elsewhere. And I believe also there's a lot of people, mostly in politics. I hear that from people who, in social media comments. I hear that from people who talk to me. And not all of them are satisfied with the two Israeli Arab parties that we have. And people are looking for something that is more integrated in the coalition, possibly even the government, for something more beneficial in the long term.
I think you once said that you wanted to be Israel's first Arab foreign minister.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What would you do differently on day one, or are there some ideas that you have?
Oh, my friend. You want me to spill all the beans? If I tell all my nice ideas, nobody will elect me.
Just one.
All right. Okay, I'm willing to compromise. I think the first thing I will do in the job is completely reform the cadet course of the foreign ministry. I think it's awesome. It's amazing that you have a national program that will help young individuals who are interested of being diplomats understand, get that opportunity, and become professionals and represent Israel abroad. I think that is awesome. But the way I think the program is set, from what I've seen, is slightly outdated, and maybe we need to change that a little bit. Or maybe we need to push for tech savvy individuals, people who are comfortable with working on social media, people who are comfortable with working with media in general, hostile or friendly media. People who speak more than one language, even in the countries that they're in. For example, if you station somebody in Europe, in France, I expect that person to know French and English and Hebrew and maybe German or another language in case, you want to expand relations. In my opinion as well, I think there should be a track for current diplomats who are interested, who are willing to go complete, another degree, take 2 years off, 3 years off, come back, get more experience in the country that they live in case they can understand the society even more. And I also think that we need to encourage, that is another thing that is not necessarily related to the cadet course, but I think we need to encourage more immigration to Israel, in my opinion. More Jewish immigration, more people who are willing to come to Israel and work with Israelis and help us and help each other build great technologies for all of us to benefit. I think that is necessary for all of us. And I think that the foreign ministry has a huge part in playing in all of this. So yeah, cadet course, immigration, hopefully legal immigration, that might emphasize Jewish legal immigration. And yeah, more opportunities, I would say. Those are just the two things I'm willing to talk about. The rest will be in my political manifesto.
Okay, I hope they elect you. Okay, so after everything you've seen in the past, 2+ years,
Right.
what still gives you hope, and what kind of a final message would you want to leave the audience with?
I would say that the thing that gives me the most hope is the human capital of the people of Israel and the state of Israel and overall, but that special human ingredient in the people. I recently started to read the King James Bible from the beginning to the end because I wanted to understand the story from the beginning to the end, from Genesis to Revelation. And I was reading all the way and I was thinking to myself, wow, like, you have the story all that goes all the way back 5,000 years almost of all the people who told the stories about the people who told the stories about the people that we have right now. And I think a lot of it comes into the state of Israel, and it's, not comes of it, funnels down to the state of Israel at the end and the people of the state of Israel. And it's beautiful. When you talk to Israelis and you ask them where you're from, they say, I'm from here, but my mom is, she was from Soviet Russia, and they came there from, Ukraine, and they immigrated from this place and that place. And you see that Zionism is not really a modern political identity, but something that was there since Exodus, really. To go there and find a place and live in the Holy Land that was given to you and create wonders in it. And I think the state of Israel as of now is a miracle. I mean, on paper, it should not existed, especially after the horrific atrocities of World War II, and it happened. It's still there. The fact that the people who built the country were teenagers, the ages of 14 to 16, they were kids who came from war-torn Europe when they were 14, 15, 16, in youth organizations and youth programs, came all the way, started building, and while fighting an independence war against 6 different armies, 7 different armies. So that is a lot of inspiration. That is a lot of resilience, and that is something that I looked into, and I think to myself, well, that what gives me hope, because it's the story of the people of Israel, and it's my people. So this is where I draw my inspiration from.
Tamer, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your insights and for your bravery and courage, for standing up for the truth, standing up for, state of Israel.
Right.
And I just want to wish you continued success in everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was also a lovely opportunity to talk and to discuss these things, and I hope that people will enjoy it. I think we'll see in the comments.